I'm recording.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Sound Good podcast. I'm your host Michael.
I'm Micah.
And today's episode is going to be a pretty proggy sounding one. We got new albums from the bands Delta Sleep and Makari. We're going to start off with the album Micah recommended to me, and it's actually Hyperreal by Makari. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Micah, and we will jump right in.
Okay. So, I got really confused for a second there. I thought we were about to start talking about Delta Sleep.
No. That's
I don't
not
know.
what you said, dog.
I know. That's what, and I'm sitting here like, dude, this isn't what we agreed on. What are you doing?
What do you
but
mean?
It is what we agreed on. Can I just be normal for 5 seconds? Oh yeah, so I ordered a new Between the Buried and Me hoodie, first of all.
Damn you.
Yeah, but it's like BT Bam, but it's like the Space Jam logo. Dude, it's so cool. So it's like, come on and slam, BTBAM.
Oh my god.
Okay, so I recommended the album Hyperreal by Makari that came out August 3rd on InVogue Records, and they are a band from Orlando, Florida, and this is their first ever LP, I guess. I have no idea how many EPs they have. They don't really have a band page, sadly.
Yeah, right. I couldn't find one either, really.
But so, as usual, Google recommended this to me based on me liking Capstan, which I need to say, I listened to Capstan once and I liked them. I don't know why all of, like, Abandoned by Bears, this, The Dwellings,
It's
Lavender
that
Town
algorithm,
album.
Man. You must have listened to it a lot.
I didn't. But I don't know, this album, just right away listening to it, it's scratched an itch in me. For me it was kind of pop punky, but Michael disagrees and says it's a lot more proggy, I guess. But let's get into why. I guess go you nerd.
Yeah, go. Okay.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I don't get any pop punk vibes from this, like,
the singer
whatsoever. I mean, I guess, but I just wanted to say this album is hella good. It's not what I was expecting at all, because, as Mike had just said, he told me it was a pop punk album, and I listened to it and thought it sounded like an I the Mighty copy, which is not a bad thing.
Should I just start doing that from now on? Just
yeah, sure.
Bait and switch you on the genre.
Just tell me every album's a pop punk album, and I'm sure I can.
This is really good pop punk. Fuck.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll find a way to. But yeah, no. Overall, I really enjoyed this album. It was a nice proggy, like I said, I the Mighty style prog rock album. It had its moments where it kind of delved into a more poppy sound, with like the use of synthesizers and stuff like that. The vocalist shows off his range very well throughout the entire album. He's got kind of a higher voice that's popular in the post-hardcore and prog post-hardcore of the current era, like Dance Gavin Dance and Tides of Man and Royal Coda and all that other stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I want to kind of touch on a few things in some of the songs, because this album, I know you said before we started recording, you said this album got kind of samey for you, right?
Yeah, they have a formula that they really stuck to, I guess, and it just became very apparent 2/3 of the way through for me.
Yeah.
Very least.
See,
yeah.
I didn't really.
It never stops being enjoyable.
Well,
but
I didn't really hear a formula per se, but like, I definitely caught similarities in the music, but I didn't think of it enough to be like a formula, I guess. Like, I don't know what would you consider the formula then?
Okay, maybe it's less so that, I guess, but just at a certain point when a song starts, it's just kind of an instantaneous feel of this is going to be less memorable than everything I heard prior, I guess, for me.
Okay, maybe.
I don't know, just some of the main hooks got a lot less interesting.
Okay.
At a certain point.
I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that some of the songs started out very similar. Like, for instance, the intro track, Better, the intro to that sounds not exactly the same, but fairly similar, in my opinion, to the intro of my favorite song off of the album, Fractals.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why they, like, it doesn't sound like they reused the same riff, but it sounds very similar in the sense of like the delay and effect just used in the intro.
Yeah.
However, I do think it was better done in Fractals. As I said, the Fractals is probably just my favorite song on the album in general because everything about it is cool. I will say, I think the biggest problem this album faces is its mixing. The guitars, in my opinion, when they were using clean tones or, like I mentioned, delay or heavy effect driven tones, if it wasn't distorted, it was kind of quiet in the mix. There was where did I make the note on the song? There was in the song The Jar. There was a really cool pentatonic or arpeggiated clean guitar lead that was going, and I could like barely hear it over everything else that was happening.
Okay.
However, I do think that the band and the album in general have very good dynamics. I think that they do very good at, or they're, is that correct grammar? I think they do dynamics very well in the sense that they know when to get quiet and know how to build up and know how to release tension and all that stuff. I noticed it a lot in Transient, especially how they switched between very poppy kind of sounding, like very pop rock sounding vocals throughout the song.
Yeah, that one specifically.
But it also had like very interesting elements in it, like a subtle synthesizer chord, like chords throughout it, that kept me interested enough to not lose my focus on the music.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do I have? Like I said with the mixing too, I think the bass is a little too low in this entire album also. There was one cool highlight that I remember from The Jar, and it was a little bass solo, but that was like one of the few moments I just outright noticed the bass without having to listen for it. There was plenty of times I caught myself listening and like, where's that instrument? And then I would finally hear it, and I'm like, oh, okay. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty solid album. You know, I'd give it like a 7.5, maybe an 8 on a good day if I was really digging the music. But it's a very, like you said, it does kind of get same-songy a little bit. I don't think it's too formulaic though at this point.
Yeah, maybe just less that. I think it's just that they absolutely put the strongest songs at the start, which is fair. That you should always do that.
Yeah, I guess kind of.
It just kind of declined for me a little bit. They never stopped being good songs. It was just less good.
I think Control was a really good song, and it also happened to be the last song. So I think Control gets that stamp of approval from me as a good ender.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, if you're trying to strategically place your songs, that's usually kind of how it goes, where it's you open up with the strongest and then maybe like middle or 2/3 it's kind of and then you always close strongly just to end on a okay note, you know?
And it was like one of the only songs with a fade out outro also, or like a just held chord into a fade out. Like everything else kind of ended on a spot, like it just cut. For the most part, it was mostly definite, defined, sharp endings.
Yeah.
And then the last song just kind of fades out into existence. And I thought that's a really good way to end an album, in my opinion. Just because it's a good signifier of, hey, this is it.
Yeah, and that's smart considering that every other song, yeah, like you said, has a hard cut, like this is the end of the song, so it's nice to differentiate what you're ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. Like I said, Fractals is probably my personal favorite song. But yeah, if you're into anything like
Capstan.
If you're anything, if you're into bands like Capstan, if you're into bands like I the Mighty, which, like I said, this vocalist is so good because Spencer Pearson is the vocalist name, and I know that because I looked it up on Bandcamp. He sounds so much like Brent Walsh that I feel like if you like I the Mighty, this band is going to be an easy second favorite. If you like bands like Idola, you'd probably like this band a lot also. It's that really proggy post-hardcore that's getting really popular again and has been popular for the past like 3-4 years. So
yeah,
if you're into any of that sound, any of that prog poppy rock sound, you'd probably really dig this album. I thought it was a pretty good album. I'd definitely listen to it again.
Does it really count as prog anymore if it's what becomes the norm? Like, it's not really progressive at that point.
I mean,
if it's what kind of...
I'm pretty sure prog is just one of those designators where it's like it fits the sound, but it does different things.
I guess so, but I don't know, because if you just want to be explicit about the meaning of the word progressive, like, it should be...
I mean, I'm not gonna...
If it's still pushing forward, if it's still, like, like... If it's establishing a new norm, then something else has to be what's defining the progressive actual part.
I don't think it's a new norm.
Well, you said that this has kind of been the popular thing for a few years.
It's just I mean, it's popular, but it's not like mainstream. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like Dance Gavin Dance.
But it is becoming
popular.
much more common.
Sure, but I still think it's to a smaller audience than what necessarily necessitates popularity in mainstream.
I guess what I'm saying is it's kind of just nice that this kind of genre of music is just getting a little more effort and attention in the songwriting and everything, and that's kind of like attributed to, I guess, some prog acts. I guess people are actually a little like caring a little bit more because it could be so much simpler.
Right. Yeah. Let's move on to the Delta Sleep album now.
Yeah, tell me about it.
For you.
Yeah.
Hard to come to terms with all the effort that it takes.
So, the Delta Sleep album is called Ghost City.
Mm-hmm.
Delta Sleep is a math rock band. They're from the UK. I don't know where specifically in the UK, but they are definitely from the UK.
Southampton.
Southampton? Is that...
or however they would pronounce that with their accent.
Stop it. You do this every time.
Them with their dingoes.
That's the wrong side of the world.
Do you think they're friends with King Gizzard?
Anyway, the album was released on the 10th of August. I think it was released like by themselves, but their Bandcamp page for the album says Delta Sleep 2018, then it says licensed under Big Scary Monsters Records, and I don't know what that means, so I'm just gonna say that.
It could be just a joke by them or something.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I mean, I know Big Scary Monsters Records is actually like a label, but I don't know.
Oh, well, shit.
Yeah, I don't know like what that wording means. So I'm just gonna say that it says Delta Sleep 2018, but then it says licensed by Big Scary Monsters Records. So I don't know. But yeah, this is their third album.
No, it's on the Big Scary Monsters Records website.
Okay, so then it was put out under Big Scary Monsters.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, fine, good.
Okay.
Now that that's settled. Yeah, this album's only about a month old. So what did you think of it?
Well, it cracked me up because when I was doing my Bandcamp delve, I did come across this and listen to the first two songs, and I literally had the thought of, I don't know, maybe it's not a ton here. And then, like, a few weeks later, you're like, hey, you should listen to this. I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sounds great. I'm glad that I took a second look at it, because I think I was just in the Bandcamp rut of just kind of finding a lot of super indie kind of ambient stuff. So when I heard the first song, I was kind of like, I think my first impression was that the whole album was like that.
Yeah.
Because the very first song, Sultans of Ping, I want to say, right?
Yeah.
Is like, it's literally a single vocal melody, be like just surrounded by ambience for the most part, and then it gets a tiny bit math rocky at the very end, but nothing crazy, and then so I think that sat a little wrong with me, because I had just gone through so many bands where that's all they were, so I heard that and I was like, maybe there isn't a lot here to talk about. But no, I was really surprised, just because, one, that's really just the intro to the album, and because the whole rest of the album is
not like that.
Yeah, they're not really ambient, but the rest of it is still relatively smooth, I guess, is how I would describe it. Because when you told me that it was math rock and your recommendation for it, I got a little worried, because there's a lot of times where math rock kind of foregoes melody. A lot of the time.
It gets kind of self-masturbatory.
Not even they just focus so much on being kind of complicated rhythmically that they forget to make it sound pretty.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And these guys do not forget that. Honestly, they kind of use the math rock parts to accentuate songs. Mm-hmm. Like, that's usually like a section of the song where everything else was like kind of building a really good melody, like as the first is the like kind of first order of business, I guess.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a lot of math rock albums I've actually listened to recently, but it seems like bands that are under the math rock genre label, like, their albums tend to have a lot of like standard 4/4 in them, which you wouldn't expect in math rock, but they always know how to make it sound interesting, whether it's with like weird syncopations and accents. But this album I do think focuses more on, like you said, melody building and consistency through that. So it is in standard time a lot more of the time, which is weird for a math rock band. But like you said, when they do break into those little mathy sections, it is a good contrast, and it feels like it's in a good spot.
Yeah, like, it makes it, I guess it just makes it stand out a lot more and makes it feel a lot more earned when you finally get to them. But I actually had the realization that, I don't know, just kind of the overall mood that this music on this album in particular kind of makes me feel is, they kind of feel like a weird derivative of Intronaut, a tiny bit. Just the way that it feels. Just obviously not heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
But just kind of the kind of drawn out vocals, I guess, and I don't know, just the overall vibe that they kind of give off. Because Intronaut's still, like, you never really headbang to... no, that's a lie. But I guess I'm thinking more of Intronaut's most recent album. It gets a lot more kind of just like with that kind of free-flowing, smooth melody kind of vibe. I don't know if you listen to it a ton.
No, I haven't. I didn't even know they put a new album out.
Oh, no, this was like... I mean, the last time we saw them live was when that album was out. The album that has Fast Worms on it.
So it's been like 3-4 years then?
Yeah, it came out in 2015.
Oh, okay.
But I guess one of the big things to bring up about this album is that obviously, since it's math rock, the drummer kills it. Yeah. The drummer's kind of nuts, honestly. But the singer's pretty cool. There's a few inflections that he has that made me think of Randy Newman a tiny bit. It was kind of funny. Do you kind of feel me on that? If you remember.
I vaguely remember who Randy Newman is. I can't.
Oh, the Toy Story theme song guy.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But so there is that. But other than that, he actually had a pretty good range, and he was able to sustain notes really, really well.
Yeah.
I guess that was kind of his thing.
I will say,
And,
good on that dude for being able to sing and play guitar. By the way, in this band,
Is he the guitarist too?
yeah, he's one of the
see
guitarists.
that.
They're a 4-piece.
Yeah, Devin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and so then they definitely did one of my favorite things that comes up in I think the first time it ever came up to me was in a Periphery album, like Periphery 2, where that album was 14 songs, and the first, 7th, and 14th songs all used the same main melody. So
Really?
it was kind of like nice checkpoints. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
cool.
And they kind of did that here, where Sultans of Ping had the main melody that it has, and then like the 4th song, I want to say, the vocals. It's not as explicit as the Periphery example I'm thinking of, but it's kind of like a variation of it in the 4th song. And then I can't remember if it's the last song or not. No, probably not, because the last song's only 3 minutes. There's another song towards the last third, possibly Floater, that feels like an expansion of the Sultans of Ping melody. Like, what would this song sound like if it was a full song? You
Yeah.
know? So that's always nice when you can do that.
Yeah.
Actually, now I'm a big liar that all of this was in single file.
Yeah.
There's no third song that goes back to it. It's Sultans of Ping and then single file. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of single file is probably the first song on the album that really showcases that math rock vibe that they have in a lot of their music. Between that song and Dot Work, if you remember that one at all, that came after Single File.
Yeah.
What did you think of those? 'Cause I think those songs are probably the mathiest ones on the
I think
album.
that's probably where it started to get that inkling of reminding me of Intronaut, just because of how complicated Intronaut is with their rhythms.
Yeah.
I think that's where it started to become that for me, just in terms of you're constantly feeling off kilter by whatever the main rhythm of the song's going to be. I think that's where the album started to get a lot more enjoyable and listenable to me, just because it's a lot more interesting than kind of ambient flowing melody, which I in retrospect, once you get to those songs, that works a lot better for the album as a whole, because it's a nice opener to get you ready, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ease you into it.
Yeah.
Because I would probably be very turned off if they just opened the album with some kind of crazy math rock doodling.
Oh boy,
frankly.
I shouldn't recommend Rooftops to you then.
No, you shouldn't.
Man. So yeah, overall feel of the album, what'd you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it again for sure. It doesn't feel 46 minutes long. Well, it's like 47 minutes long.
It's a pretty long.
Yeah.
All the songs for the most part are pretty long. A lot of them are over 4 minutes. Like fewer over 5.
Yeah, but I think that they're just long enough to where you don't get tired of them, and they end where they should.
Definitely.
And you move on to the next musical idea.
Right.
But at the same time, they do all flow pretty well. Like, I don't think that there's any hard cuts between songs typically on this album.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
That's
the thoughts. That's the thoughts, man. We are so bad at ending episodes.
Yeah, we are.
That? Like,
Let's just never say goodbye. Let's just sit here.
just never say goodbye. Okay. Alright, everybody, that does it for another episode of the Sound Good podcast. I hope you enjoyed our talks about the albums. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on iTunes and Google Play. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ItSoundsGoodPod. Give us a like on Facebook, and we'll see you next week.